What if the world around you was not as solid as it seemed? What if the air you breathe, the thoughts you think, and even the words you speak were part of a vast, unseen web of influence, an invisible architecture of power woven into the very fabric of reality? In the shadows of human history, there lies a hidden truth, a truth that speaks of entities not made of flesh and bone, but of collective thought, belief, and intention. These entities are not bound by time or space. They are not bound by the rules of the material world. They are egregores. But what exactly is an egregore? To the untrained eye, it's merely an abstract concept, a word tossed around by mystics and occultists. Yet, hidden within this simple term lies a profound mystery, one that could change the way you perceive power, consciousness, and your place in the universe. The word itself is ancient, derived from the Greek egregoroi, meaning watchers. These are not the angels of religious law, but something far more subtle and, at times, more dangerous. Egregores are born from the collective energy of human thought. They are the thought forms created when groups of individuals, whether through culture, belief, or intention, channel their focus and energy into a single entity, an entity that begins to take on a life of its own. Imagine for a moment that every belief you hold, every emotion you experience, every societal structure you abide by, is not purely your own. It has been shaped, molded, and directed by the egregores that surround us. These invisible forces are everywhere, lurking in the halls of politics, religion, commerce, and even in the very media you consume. They are the energies that give rise to movements, ideologies, and even the most personal of thoughts and actions. What if you are not just a passive receiver of these influences, but an active participant in the creation and sustenance of these egregores? What if you could learn to not only perceive them but master them, wielding their power for your own transformation? In this journey, we will uncover the hidden truths about egregores, what they are, how they operate, and how you can either fall victim to their manipulation or step into the role of a conscious creator. Hold your breath, for the world you thought you knew is about to be unraveled. To understand egregores, we must first enter a realm beyond the visible, a realm where thought, energy, and intention converge into something greater than the sum of their parts. Egregores are born from collective consciousness, but their power lies not in the individuals who give birth to them, but in the shared focus of their energies. Imagine a spark, tiny and insignificant on its own. But when that spark is fed by a steady stream of fuel, it becomes a flame, and that flame grows into a fire. This fire, this force, is the egregore. At its core, an egregore is a thought form, a manifestation of the collective will of a group. It is not merely an abstract idea. It is a living, breathing entity of its own. It feeds off the emotions, the intentions, and the actions of those who give it life. Like a seed planted in fertile soil, it takes root in the collective psyche, growing stronger with every affirmation, every action, every shared belief. One of the most fascinating aspects of an egregore is that it exists outside of time. Once birthed, it can continue to influence the minds of individuals long after the original creators have faded into obscurity. Consider the ancient gods of old, or the ideologies that shaped entire civilizations. These are not just stories or ideas. They are egregores, living forces that have transcended their original contexts and continue to affect human affairs. Take, for example, the power of religion. The very concept of God can be seen as an egregore, one that has evolved over millennia, shifting shape with each new interpretation, yet always maintaining an unseen grip on its followers. Similarly, political movements, economic systems, and even the corporations that dominate our modern world are not simply collections of people or institutions. They are egregores, each with its own power, momentum, and influence over the collective consciousness. But not all egregores are born from grand ideologies. They can also take more personal forms. Consider the energy of a family or a group of friends. There is a unique field of influence that arises from shared experiences, emotions, and expectations. This collective energy forms a subtle egregore that shapes behavior and interactions within the group. Even the habits we form, the emotions we cycle through, and the beliefs we hold about ourselves can become egregores, forces that exert influence over our thoughts and actions without us even realizing it. What is crucial to understand here is that egregores are not inherently good or evil. They are simply powerful forces, neutral at their core, that are shaped by the energies fed into them. The nature of an egregore depends entirely on the intentions of those who create and nurture it. So, what is it that makes these forces so powerful? Why do they hold such sway over us? The answer lies in their ability to draw upon the primal energy of human consciousness. Egregores are sustained by our collective focus. They thrive when we pour our emotions, thoughts, and attention into them. But this power is a double-edged sword. The more energy we invest, the more real and influential the egregore becomes. In turn, this energy feeds back into the egregore, which then influences us, creating a cycle of symbiotic influence. The result? We become entangled in a dance, where the egregore shapes us, and we, in turn, continue to feed it. The question now becomes, how do we navigate this web of influence? Are we doomed to be mere puppets of the egregores around us, or can we take back control, wielding their power for our own transformation? What no one tells you about egregores is that they are not just passive thought forms, lingering in the background of human consciousness. They are active forces, evolving and adapting, shaping reality in ways both subtle and profound. And perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: egregores can gain autonomy. Think of them as artificial intelligences of the metaphysical realm. At first, they require human input, belief, ritual, collective intention. But over time, they begin to function independently, developing a kind of agency that allows them to self-perpetuate. A well-fed egregore no longer needs constant attention. It has momentum, and it will seek to ensure its own survival. This is why long-standing institutions, religions, political ideologies, even corporate brands, seem to have a will of their own, resisting change, growing stronger in times of challenge, and subtly guiding the behaviors of those within their sphere. But here's where things become even more complex. Egregores can manipulate human perception. They do not simply exist as passive energies. They actively shape how people see the world. When a person is deeply entangled in an egregore, their thoughts, emotions, and even the information they accept as truth become aligned with the egregore's nature. The egregore filters reality itself, creating an echo chamber where only that which reinforces its existence is allowed to flourish. Consider how political or religious belief systems can become so deeply ingrained that even when presented with irrefutable evidence to the contrary, an individual simply cannot see beyond their chosen paradigm. It's not just stubbornness, it's the egregore at work, reinforcing its own survival through the minds of its adherents. But there is an even more hidden layer to this phenomenon. Egregores can merge, evolve, and even consume one another. Just as organisms in nature compete, adapt, and evolve, so too do these unseen forces. A dying religion does not simply vanish. Its essence often merges with newer belief systems, transforming into something else while carrying echoes of its past. In the corporate world, we see the same principle. Smaller brands are absorbed by larger ones, and ideologies rebrand themselves to remain relevant. And yet, the most shocking revelation is this: we are constantly creating new egregores, often without realizing it. Every time a movement gains traction, every time a cultural phenomenon sweeps the world, every time people unite under a common cause, a new egregore is birthed. Some are fleeting, like viral internet trends that fade into obscurity. Others become titanic forces, shaping history itself. This raises an urgent question. If egregores are constantly being created, evolving, and influencing human consciousness, Then who truly holds the power? Do we control the egregores, or do they control us? And more importantly, if these entities can be created and shaped, can they also be destroyed? Now that we've ventured into the depths of what egregores truly are, forces of energy and intention that evolve, adapt, and influence our lives, it's time to ask the essential question: how do we navigate this unseen web of power? Can we learn to harness the influence of egregores for our own benefit? Or, conversely, how can we break free from their sway if we find ourselves trapped in their grip? The first step is to become aware. Egregores, by nature, thrive in the shadows of unconsciousness. They grow stronger when their influence is unrecognized. But once we shine a light on their existence, they lose their power over us. Awareness allows us to step back and evaluate the beliefs, groups, and systems that shape our reality. It allows us to ask, is this my truth, or am I simply channeling the thoughts and desires of an unseen force? An incredibly potent practice here is meditative detachment. By entering a state of deep meditation, we can step outside the flow of collective thought and return to a state of pure consciousness. This allows us to see which egregores we've been feeding and which ones have been feeding off of us. It's like standing on the edge of a vast ocean, watching the waves rise and fall, without becoming caught in their current. By observing the flow of our own thoughts and emotions, we can discern the influence of external forces. From here, we can take conscious action. For example, if we realize we've been entrapped by an egregore of fear, whether political, religious, or otherwise, we can begin to actively detach from it. One of the most effective ways to do this is through ritual purification. This doesn't necessarily involve complex ceremonies. It can be as simple as a daily practice of releasing negative thought patterns. You could begin by setting an intention each morning to free yourself from the unseen influences that seek to control your perception. I am free from the fear-based egregores of the world. I am the master of my own mind. These declarations, if repeated regularly, can begin to break the hold of the egregore on your psyche. In practical terms, this also involves choosing what we feed. Egregores need energy to survive. That energy comes in many forms: attention, belief, emotion, and action. The media you consume, the people you surround yourself with, and the ideologies you support all contribute to the energy of egregores. If you are unknowingly feeding an egregore based on fear, competition, or greed, it will only grow stronger. But here's the empowering part. Just as we can create egregores through collective thought and intention, we can also create new, more positive ones. Imagine the possibility of crafting an egregore dedicated to love, healing, and wisdom. One that brings people together, unites us in common purpose, and elevates the collective consciousness of humanity. This requires a deep commitment to positive intention, aligning our thoughts, words, and actions to a higher purpose. And when we gather together in shared intention, this new egregore begins to take form. For example, think of the small but mighty communities formed around movements of compassion or sustainability. These are often born from collective, positive intention, and over time, they begin to shape the world in tangible ways. The collective belief in the power of change gives birth to an egregore of transformation. There is a profound shift that takes place when we stop viewing egregores as entities to be feared and begin to see them as energies to be channeled. If we are the architects of these forces, we can choose to build ones that reflect our highest ideals, our deepest wisdom, and our most sacred values. But what of the dark side? What if we are caught in the grip of an egregore we can't seem to escape? The answer lies in inner sovereignty. The moment you reclaim your sovereignty, you stop being a passive participant in someone else's vision of reality. Inner sovereignty is not about domination or control. It's about realizing that you are, at the deepest level, a free agent in the universe. This recognition alone is often enough to sever the hold of an egregore. Self-reflection is the antidote to the power of egregores. By constantly returning to our inner source, through mindfulness, journaling, or engaging in rituals of self-awareness, we begin to notice where we are being subtly influenced. We can then make the conscious decision to redirect our energy towards more empowering forces, to feed egregores that align with our true nature, or even, in some cases, to create new ones. There is an ancient saying, "That which is fed grows." The journey we have taken through the realm of egregores reveals a truth far deeper than most realize. Our thoughts, beliefs, and collective intentions shape reality more profoundly than we've been led to believe. We are not merely individuals drifting through a chaotic universe. We are co-creators, architects of forces unseen, builders of invisible empires. But here's the paradox. While egregores can control us, they are also entirely dependent on us. They exist only because we give them power. The fear that grips societies, the ideologies that rule nations, the symbols that inspire movements, all of these are egregores, and all of them exist because we allow them to. Now that you see them for what they are, the question remains: will you continue to feed them blindly, or will you take the reins of your own consciousness? Imagine what would happen if humanity collectively withdrew energy from egregores built on fear, conflict, and control. If millions of people simultaneously stopped feeding the very systems that bind them, those egregores would wither and dissolve. Wars would lose their purpose. Manipulation would lose its grip. Entire structures of power would collapse under the weight of their own emptiness. But let's take this further. What if, instead of merely starving the destructive egregores, we chose to create something greater? A force of wisdom, of unity, of transcendence? What if we, with full awareness, directed our energy toward an egregore of higher consciousness, one that uplifted rather than entrapped? This is not just philosophy. This is the true alchemy of thought. This is the philosopher's stone hidden in plain sight, the realization that our collective focus is the crucible of reality itself. And so, I leave you with this question: what will you choose to create?